Hey guys, Dr. J here. We're going to talk about the top 5 strategies you can do to grow your hair back and prevent hair loss. Done lots of different videos on the topic. I'm always learning new things, applying new things myself. So just kind of want to put some of the things out there that I see working best, and really want to talk about the root underlying cause of why you may be losing your hair. So first off, is 3 major kinds of hair loss as I kind of go over. You have your telogen effluvium. This is your systemic hair shedding. This can happen with low-calorie diets, getting, let's say, a virus, getting sick, easily happen with these kind of things, and you have this systemic shedding. Okay, then we're going to have alopecia areata, or autoimmune type of condition where your hair follicles are attacked, and this is going to be coming more in patches. You'll see patches come out of the hair, and there's different subtypes of alopecia areata, but that kind of gives you, it's more of an inflammatory issue, usually treated with steroids, and obviously get to the root cause, get on an autoimmune diet, get your gut fixed too. And the third one is androgenic alopecia, or male pattern baldness, where you have testosterone, it gets converted to DHT. So T to DHT, this is a stronger, let's say, testosterone. It's not as anabolic. It kind of grows hair. It's more for sexual development. Doesn't really necessarily grow as much muscle, but it's technically a stronger testosterone, but it's not a anabolic. Think of it, a masculine testosterone. So it's thought of as like a waste metabolite because it's more responsible during maturation, puberty, and when you're adult, it's less necessary. And so there's a lot of different ways we can drop that. So one, it's going to create miniaturation of the hair. So first off, you may not even lose your hair. You may get hair that starts to thin, and it may look like you've lost 20, 30% of your hair just with thinner hair, because DHT can thin out the hair. It can also decrease some of that blood flow potentially as well. So we have that DHT as a driving factor to miniaturization, and then the hair miniaturizes. So each follicle, right, we go from our anagen phase, may last 5 to 7 years, and then we go to essentially a telogen phase where we're kind of resting. We're in that resting period. Then that catagen phase where it breaks off, and then we redo essentially that whole anagen phase again. So we have our different phases. So we have our anagen, our growth phase. In our catagen phase, it breaks off, and then our telogen phase, it's resting, and then we repeat it all over again with anagen. And so the whole goal is that DHT is going to decrease the anagen phase, the growth phase, decrease it, and it's also going to, over time, make the hair smaller and smaller and thinner and thinner and thinner, and then eventually it falls out. And so there's naturally things we can do to get that hair from thinning is we can get the DHT down. So there's medications on one side. You're going to have your type 2 alpha reductase inhibitors. That's the medication. So the enzyme that goes from testosterone to DHT, this enzyme is called alpha reductase. And we can decrease that enzyme with certain nutrients. So I'm always all about the diet stuff first, right? Zinc, selenium, good nutrients. Reishi mushroom, right? Good things that can help block that. Getting inflammation down is going to decrease the potentiation of DHT, right? DHT, the more inflamed you are, the more it's going to create problems. I've seen people with DHT just make diet changes, get their gut fixed, and I've seen better improvement on their hair, right? Because your hair is made from keratin, all from protein. So if we have poor gut function, we're not absorbing, breaking things down, we're not getting good collagen amino acids, right? Amino acids from connective tissue. Think of tendons, knuckles, think soups, think bone broths. Most people aren't getting their proteins from that. They're getting it from muscle meat. So you may not be getting the big, awesome collagen peptides. And so getting that from amino acids can help with the hair significantly. We may get our selenium and zinc because we're eating more glandulars. We're getting more nutrient-dense foods. Now those nutrients are also decreasing DHT. And so we have our type 2 enzyme, which is going to be blocked primarily by finasteride. About 70% of the enzyme will be blocked with like a finasteride. And again, the dose is logarithmic. So a 0.12 milligram dose does about 80% of the work as a 1 milligram dose. So most of the side effects, I think, happen with the higher dose, where I think everyone should start at that 0.1, 0.2, and then you can titrate up slowly. That way you mitigate side effects. And option 2 is do a topical. That bypasses the liver, that bypasses systemic side effects, because you really want the enzyme blocking here. You don't want it elsewhere in the body. And so you can also do it topically, and then you kind of bypass that. So strategy 1 is microdose. Strategy 2 is do it topically. And then you can use a liposomal formula that keeps it more locally versus going systemic. Option 3 within the medications is going to be something like Avodart or dutasteride. That's going to block type 1 and type 2 isoenzymes of the AR enzyme, and it's going to also block 90%. So now you, instead of having just the 2 type of the alpha reductase, now we have type 1 and 2, and now we're blocking 90% versus 70%. So if you're really a decreased responder, maybe you have high levels of DHT, maybe you run your test, maybe you're at 70, 80, 90, and then you run finasteride or other natural things. And they'll say you're still at the top end of the range. That may make sense to go into a stronger version. And again, I always recommend topical over systemic. The type 1 isoenzymes of the alpha reductase can cross the blood-brain barrier. This is where the neurosteroids come into play. And so you always got to be a little bit careful when you're impacting brain with the type 1 isoenzymes. Type 2 tend to stay more localized in the hair or in the prostate. So, and then you have the Proscar medication, which is like the higher dose finasteride, a 5 milligram versus a 1. So just, big things out of the gate. So testosterone to DHT, we have our AR enzyme, we have our type 2, which is the finasteride blocker, the type 1, and to 90% is going to be the dutasteride or the Avodart, which is the trade name. And then we have finasteride or Propecia, which is the trade name of that. All right, so that's the medication. Now, we can also do other herbs that are very helpful at blocking DHT. We can do it locally with a topical saw palmetto. Very good because it blocks androgen as well as DHT, because testosterone technically can have some impact on the hair follicle as well. Not as much. If you look at some of the medications that came out recently, one medication went through phase 3 clinical trials. I forget the name of it, but it went through phase 3 clinical trial back in March, April, and the results weren't that great, but it was a testosterone blocker. Not great results because DHT seems to be the more miniaturizing hair compound there. So we have our saw palmetto topically can block DHT, but also the androgens. And also if we take it orally, it's also going to block DHT in the liver, but also in the hair follicle. So if we can do oral and topical, it's even better. So about 350 to 400 milligrams of that in a CO2 extract is ideal. Liquid's better. And then we also want to do it topically if we can. So I'll put recommended products and links down below. Next, I love my NAC, N-acetylcysteine. NAC has shown in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials to be better than minoxidil, if not as good, if not better. It works on oxidative stress. It's also helping to provide amino acid building blocks that could be helpful for the hair as well. And it's going to help with inflammation, superoxidase mutase. It can increase glutathione, which could help with the hair health as well. So there's a lot of potential different mechanisms there. Everything from oxidative stress to glutathione to just providing good, healthy building blocks. Maybe some of these are impacting the mechanism of the anagen phase, having a better anagen phase. Okay. And we have other medications like our minoxidil or Rogaine. This has been, I think 2% was approved in 88 and then 5% in the early 90s. So this has been around forever. Pretty safe. Originally came off as a blood pressure medication in the late 60s. They found with a lot of the symptom surveys, lots of hair growth. Now it can be used as a anagen phase stimulator. How it works is typically vasodilation, improving microcirculation, works on the sodium, potassium pump, so to speak. No one really has the mechanism 100% dialed in, but we know it could be in 1 or 2 or 3 of those avenues. And it works by increasing the anagen phase, that growth phase, right? So it goes anagen, and then typically we're going to have that catagen, it breaks off, telogen, it rests, and then it has the falling out, and then that's where the anagen restarts. And so minoxidil is going to help stimulate the anagen phase. It does nothing to address the DHT and the shrinking or the maturation of the follicle. Keep that in mind. So if you do it, it's not really a root cause thing. I always tell patients, and it does create a kind of a golden handcuff, whatever follicles you get back or thicken due to it, you could lose it once you stop. So it's kind of the golden handcuffs. You really want to think about, like, should I start this now? I always say get to the root cause, get the DHT drop first. And if you're on the fence, like I'm always the natural guy first. So you can always say, let's take some maybe oral saw palmetto. Maybe we'll do some topical saw palmetto, and then we can work on it that way. And then if I want, I can add in a good quality minoxidil, ideally one without the propylene glycol and all the junky fillers. And then there's some pretty good ones on the market that have some castor oil and some niacin and some biotin in it. So it actually helps with building blocks on the hair. So I do like that quite a bit. So we have our anagen phase, then we're going to stimulate that. But again, it only works 30-40% of the time. So the reason why it wouldn't work is we're not converting the sulfatase enzyme in the hair. We're not activating it, so we're not converting it to minoxidil sulfase. And so what we can do is we can either add in retinoic acid, so you can get it compounded, add in vitamin A, retinoic acid. You can also microneedle. Microneedle will activate that minoxidil sulfate in the hair, and that will activate it, and that will allow it to work. And so if you're one of these responders that half the time it's not working, microneedling, option 1, about a 1 to 1.5 millimeter depth with the microneedling pen. Option 2, compound it with retinoic acid, which is a vitamin A kind of analog. So that's your option there. Let's see here. Next, what else can we do? Red light's great. I have a red light cap in my office over here. Red light can work great. It's helpful maybe 5-8% of the time. It's not going to be a deal breaker. It's going to stimulate blood flow. It's going to help with inflammation. So if you have inflammation on the scalp, that's a thing. It can stimulate the mitochondria on the hair. It can improve just mitochondrial function, circulation. So these are all good things. May not be the root cause. It may not be a game changer, but if you have the resources, it can't hurt to do it. A lot of benefits with right light. I have a laser here. This is a laser. I'll do it on my thyroid and other tissue here. I have a setting here for hair. So here's a hair setting. This is a red light and an infrared frequency, and it's frequency specific. So I can, let's say, hit my sideburns here. Obviously avoid my eyes, and I can trace that area right here, which can be very helpful. I'll go this way so I don't hit it. So I can hit my sideburns right here, get a little bit more hair growth there. Again, it's a laser, so this is really powerful. The caps are better because you get the whole surface area, but I can target, let's see, my chin here or my sideburns here. So it's helpful. It's still a cool modality to have. And I have my capillus cap over here that's really cool that you wear right on your head. Let me actually grab that for you guys so you guys can see it. So that's the Avant laser here. That's a actual laser, 1300 milliwatt frequency for energy-wise for the infrared, and then 1000 milliwatt for the red, which is 635 nanometer and 805 nanometer. One sec. Okay. So I do this about 1 to 2 times a day. It's my capillus. So it's a red light cap. You can see right here. That's how it looks. I would just put it on like so. I actually did 2 sets before I got on this call here, or on this video. Put this guy on like this, hit the button, and then it will go on while I'm wearing it. If you slide it up, you can see a little bit, but then once it comes off, it'll come off like that. So back on, and then back off. So you can see the benefit, right? Something like this, huge benefit by having, it'll just keep on beeping now. I can turn it off. There we go. So the cool thing about that is you get the whole entire scalp. Get my hair a little touched up here. We are live. All right, so benefit, something like this. This is great if you're like topically hitting an area, hitting your thyroid, hitting a certain spot, hitting a joint. Not great to trace the entire hair. You can see the surface area can be difficult on that. A hat's gonna make it a lot better to cover the whole area at once. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So red light, pretty cool. Not gonna be root cause. It's kind of in the modality camp. All right, and then of course, fixing your gut. If we're not breaking down and assimilating protein, if we have low stomach acid, if we have low enzymes, we're not absorbing the building blocks to make keratin on the hair, that's gonna be a problem. I already mentioned some micronutrients earlier. Some of these micronutrients are important for hair health, but they also could potentially block DHT. So we're talking selenium. We're talking potentially copper, especially for color of the hair. Selenium and copper for the hair color is great. NAC, very important for hair growth, but also for the color, because the color can essentially, if your hair gets bleached, the melanin in your hair, the same pigment in your skin is actually in your hair, that gets bleached by the hydrogen peroxide at the scalp level. And things like NAC help with the oxidative stress from the hydrogen peroxide, so it can neutralize the hydrogen peroxide, and so can the selenium. And so very helpful. So to avoid just the hair graying and just the oxidative stress that can break the hair down over time from inflammation, stress, poor diet, glycation, your carbohydrates are too high, all those things can negatively impact your hair. And so in general, there's a lot of different things I look at when someone comes in that has hair issues. The first thing is I'm looking at their gut. I'm making sure they're breaking down protein. I'm making sure their diet is nutrient dense. They're getting the selenium, the zinc, they're getting the vitamin A, they're getting the copper, they're getting healthy fats and proteins. They're breaking things down. 2, I'm looking at their hormones. Is cortisol way out of whack? Are they very catabolic where their cortisol could be breaking down connective tissue, lean, healthy tissue, hair including? Is the thyroid low? Because thyroid could be one of these things that aids in telogen effluvium. Thyroid hormone is a powerful stimulator in that anagen growth phase for your hair. So if you have low thyroid, it could potentially be a driving factor of that telogen effluvium. So that could be happening in the background. So we have our hormones. Our female hormones can be a big thing. Progesterone can play an important role with hair growth. That's why women, almost every woman gets it when they have a kid. They get their HCG. They're making a lot of progesterone. Their hair gets really thick. Even when they're breastfeeding, their hair looks amazing. They stop breastfeeding. They have their baby, and then it's like the hair really starts to thin out and even shed. And so female hormones play an important role, especially HCG in pregnancy and progesterone on the backside. Because normally progesterone would kind of be basically it would ebb and flow throughout the cycle. Now it's staying abnormally high throughout a pregnancy and into breastfeeding time. And so that could be a thing there on the hormone side. And then we have our modalities. So DHT could be a thing. If you're genetically sensitive, if you're a male and genetically sensitive, it could be a thing. So we have our natural alternatives. We have reishi mushroom we could take topically and orally. Again, more anecdotal. We have our saw palmetto. Lots of studies on that. I always recommend doing it orally and topically. When we decrease testosterone to DHT, we do get increased testosterone. So blocking DHT can increase T, testosterone, 15-20% according to some studies. And so you may have improved testosterone as well. Now, when we block DHT, when do we have side effects? My opinion is if we have very low testosterone and we're hanging on our DHT from an androgen standpoint, and then we smash that down and we already had low T and our DHT was the only thing holding us on, essentially holding on to us, then that could potentially create side effects. So the 2% of side effects according to studies with finasteride or blocking DHT typically come from people that have low T and have high levels of DHT and we smash it. Or we're aromatizing. We're making lots of estrogen already, and then we increase our testosterone. We're already aromatizing. We're already converting T to E now. So we have alpha reductase. AR goes from T to DHT. And then now aromatase, so a little different. Alpha reductase, AR there. That's alpha reductase. Now aromatase goes from T to E, testosterone to estrogen. And so now if we're already aromatizing, we're insulin resistant, we're inflamed, we already have maybe some higher E, and then we increase our T more by blocking T to DHT, now what happens is our estrogen goes up, and that could create the gynecomastia, the man boobs, and more of those side effects, the brain fog. So if you're in, you can always do testing beforehand, see where your DHT sits, see where your T sits, see where your estradiol sits, and then you can get on it and then test and then see. And then you can also do protocols where you do things, if you want to go to a topical med, do a topical where it's isolated in the scalp and does not go systemic. And again, my natural bias is to go to a saw palmetto oral, so you have systemic coverage, as well as topical, so you block the androgens and the DHT topically. So I like that because you really cover all your bases, way less side effects. Saw palmetto in the literature really only has tummy upset as a side effect, so not too bad. But it may be serious. It may be happening really fast. You may have a lot of genetics not working in your favor, and that's where it may make sense to go to a medication like finasteride or dutasteride. But if you do, microdose, work your way up, get labs ahead of time and know where your T is, know where your DHT is, know where your estradiol is, see where you're at, see what the medication does. Microdose at first, 0.1, 0.2 milligrams. Titrate up, try to do it topically and liposomal. And then if you go systemic orally, just make sure you're testing it, see where you're at, try to go topically over systemic. That's kind of my general take. I've been working with thousands of patients, hundreds of guys that have had these issues. So we have our medications. What's the mechanism? DHT. We have our supplements that are more natural. Okay, that's the saw palmetto. We could maybe add pumpkin seed, stinging nettle to that. We could add reishi as well, but I would put a hierarchy of saw palmetto first. Then we have our micronutrients. That's going to be our selenium, our zinc, our copper. That's going to be our collagen peptides. And then NAC or cysteine would be right in there as well. We could throw biotin too. We could add biotin in as kind of a protein because it's going to work on the protein and the building blocks for the hair. And then we have topical support. So we have the laser is kind of a topical, right? Our Capillus cap right here. That's a topical. I would say my Purador anti-hair loss shampoo, I'd say is also a topical. One, it's an aloe base, so it's super hydrating. There's no SLS in it, sodium lauryl sulfate. There's no parabens. There's no junk that's overly drying. The base is in a aloe vera, which is organic. It has an argan oil and has some really good amla oil, so it's really good fatty acids, hydrating, and it has a bunch of herbs, hoshi wu, ginseng, saw palmetto, that are going to help block DHT as well. So you get some topical absorption if you put it on, leave it for a couple of minutes. So that's super helpful and beneficial. But it's, you know, it's like that's going to be maybe 5-10%, you know, maybe your laser cap's 5%, maybe your microneedling's 20%, maybe the saw palmetto's 30%, maybe you fix your diet, maybe you really have a genetic predisposition, then you throw in the finasteride and you go low dose and you go topical versus oral. Maybe you have to go Avodart, dutasteride, but you try to flow it as natural as possible, get to the root cause. Again, if it's a genetic issue, you know, you may have to bring in a medication, but don't ignore the DHT component. There's other ancillary things you could do as well, like copper peptides. is shown to help with DHT as well. So you could also throw in a topical copper peptide as well. We have that too. There's other things that are really interesting. There's different PRP potential options. I had a doctor last year on the podcast where we talked about that, where you have to spin it, Dr. Bauman, have to spin it at a level to get a therapeutic level of PRP to make it worthwhile. So a lot of the injections don't have a therapeutic level there. There's a certain number he talked about in that podcast. We'll link it down below. And there's also exosomes, which are a little bit more experimental, but there's some great anecdotal evidence out there of exosome therapy. So that's another kind of promising option. But I tell patients, the first thing out of the gate, get your diet good. Get the inflammation down. Get the nutrient density up. Get all those micronutrients up. Make sure you're digesting your protein well. Hydrochloric acid enzymes. Work on getting the DHT down. My philosophy is that DHT becomes more of an issue the more inflamed you are. So the more inflamed you are, the more DHT will become a problem. So if you get the inflammation lower, DHT becomes less problematic. Now that being said, that genetic predisposition is still strong. So work on getting the DHT down. Palmetto oral topical. You can also use castor oil, which works on PGE E1, E2. Those are other options too. So PGE2 is like a big castor oil one. You can work on your microneedling. You can add in a minoxidil, which is great too because that will work on the antigen. You can do laser light. You can do microneedling at 1.5 millimeters and add those various 3 to 5 modalities. So my modalities will be maybe microneedling, maybe a red light cap. Maybe we add in scalp massage to work on microcirculation. That's fine too. We could also add in, I mentioned red light. We could also add a good shampoo. So I like the anti-hair thinning shampoo. There is some data that the anti-androgen effect of a Nizoral or a ketoconazole 2% tends to be therapeutic. Knocking down the androgens with that can be helpful as well and stimulating hair growth. And also with microneedling, that can actually potentiate the effects of minoxidil 400%. So you can significantly impact your hair and make the minoxidil work better. So just understand what the root cause is. Pick your 3 to 5 modalities. Make sure your diet's first. Your digestion's right in there. You can look deeper at your hormones if you're female or male or have thyroid issues. And then we can make sure the micronutrients are present. And then work on the DHT component. And then work on everything else regarding either topical microneedling, topical red light, or a really good shampoo to work on the systemic androgen effects as well. So again, Dr. J here. This is a long video. There's a lot of stuff here, so I just want to lay it out so you guys feel comfortable. Pick 1 or 2 or 3 things. We'll put the products that we use as a pinned comment in the description below so you guys can look at it. If you want more feedback, you want more support from me, click down below. You can reach out and schedule a consult with me worldwide. If you want that functional medicine support and get to the root cause of what's happening, please reach out down below. All right, guys, take care. Bye now.